Welcome to another edition of Thinking Through the Word. We're making our way through the Old Testament, one book at a time, taking one chapter or portion of a chapter at a time. Our study this week is in the book of Ecclesiastes, part of the wisdom literature. So a unique format in its poetic writing and in a fascinating presentation of truth in the sense of its unique unfolding of the logic of the message. Someday we need to study through this book as a church family and make our way all the way through it. Today, with the help of the conclusion of the book, I want us to try to grasp something of what is being said in this book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes, in essence, is exposing this rat race of life, we might say. That endless search for satisfaction in money, in sex, in knowledge, fame, or success. Ecclesiastes attacks human autonomy or independence. It shows us our weakness, our frailty. It shows the brevity of life. When we come to the end, we find this conclusion to be helpful in pulling it all together so that even as we may be a little bit unsettled or confused having read through the book, we get to the end and we know exactly what we are supposed to do. So let's look at the end, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, beginning in verse 8, where we find the bookend from chapter 1 and verse 2, what we could think of as a theme, as long as we define it right, Vanity of Vanities. The preacher is the speaker throughout the book, and we could probably safely generalize that this is Solomon in a sermon kind of preaching format. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That's that rat race of life. That's the futility and frustration of life after Eden, in a sin-cursed world where everything that is supposed to be good is even contaminated. And now there is this presence of sin and its curse, its effects. Ultimately, that chief enemy, death. So life on earth can be summed up as vanity of vanities. But notice how the conclusion proceeds. The preacher has taught the people knowledge. We can know something that addresses the vanity that we feel or sense or experience or see in the world. We've been taught knowledge, weighing, studying, arranging the proverbs with great care. Notice how these proverbs are then defined. The preacher sought to find words of delight. That's good news. And we read about it in Psalm 1. Blessed is the man. We read about it in the Proverbs. The path of the fool versus the path of the wise. And the preacher gave us these words of delight. He wrote words of truth. So we have knowledge, the wisdom of the Proverbs that brings delight. They are words of truth. And now see how these words prove fruitful in our lives. The words of the wise are like, so that's one of those words that are going to give us a picture. That's how the Proverbs have worked. These words of the wise are like, first of all, goads. This is a long pointed stick, and they would prod the cows forward, the goats, the sheep. It was used to drive them on, a motivation, an inspiration, if you will. But these words of the wise are also like nails firmly fixed. There's a security, there's a stability, there's a quality that makes them dependable for building your life on. The words of the wise. And it concludes, they are given by one shepherd. And again, we could dive into exactly what this means, but I think we're safe again to start our thinking with the Psalms of Psalm 23. The Lord is our shepherd. And through his preacher, he has given us wise words that can motivate us onward in life, and that can be the security and the stability on which we build our lives, following the one shepherd. And then a warning, my son, beware of anything beyond these. What are the these? Well, I think we can go back to anything beyond these words of the wise. Anything beyond these goads, anything beyond these nails firmly fixed, anything beyond these sayings, anything beyond those, be careful. You don't want to become a legalist, adding to the goads and the nails. And you don't want to be led astray by the rudiments of the world, those elementary building blocks of the thinking of the world. Beware of anything beyond these. And he says it this way, of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. We come to verse 13, and we can't miss the concluding nature, a phrase that just stands by itself, almost without full grammatical completion. It's just the end of the matter. Well, that should catch our attention, especially if you've read Ecclesiastes and you realize at some points you feel like you have no idea what's being said. And yet here's the end of the matter. Whether you gleaned it all or not, you can understand this. At the end, after all has been heard, we have two great truths. Number one, fear God. And number two, keep his commandments. Fear God and keep his commandments. And then a reason for those commands. For, there's our reason, this fearing God, this keeping his commandments, is the whole duty of man. And you can just plug your name in there. Whatever it is, you fill in the blank. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And, if we're honest, this word duty has fallen on hard times. It almost becomes the enemy of our grace-filled language. We think everything should be joy and sweet desire and happy commitment. And yet, we need not be afraid of duty, of obligation, of faithfulness to covenant, of stewardship. This is my obligation. This is my calling. This is my role as a servant of Jesus Christ. This is the whole duty of man. Jesus told us in John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. In John 15:14, he said, you are my friends if you do what I command you. Doesn't mean there's no heart behind it, but it does mean the doing, the obeying, the duty is wholesome and good and right. And sometimes our emotions may not drive us onward, but duty may. Your whole duty is to fear God, reverence, awe, respect, honor, glory, praise. Fear God and demonstrate this fear of God by keeping his commandments. Fear God and keep his commandments. So we have fear God and keep commandments. Now, think of this simple icon, this logo, FG and KC. Fear God and keep his commandments. And then start reading through Ecclesiastes, realizing that anything that is said there is leading to the conclusion of the whole matter. Your duty is fear God and keep his commandments. Sometimes life is good, we see in Ecclesiastes, and we enjoy God's good gifts. Okay, fear God and keep his commandments. Other times life is hard, painful. Okay, fear God and keep his commandments. Tragically, for humans, we feel sometimes life is short. Okay, fear God and keep his commandments. Sometimes we don't always have the answers. Fear God and keep his commandments. Sometimes it seems like our service to God, all our work and efforts are like a waste of time. Right. The author would say, I know, but here's your whole duty. Fear God and keep his commandments. Some of you know very well what it is to feel the weight of despair or depression, and you seem to lack purpose. Fear God and keep his commandments. Sometimes you are keenly aware of your limitations, your weaknesses, and it seems like you just aren't the one for the job. Fear God and keep his commandments. Sometimes joy seems elusive. Fear God and keep his commandments. The end of the matter, when all has been heard, you have a duty. You have a purpose. You were created for a reason to fear God and keep his commandments. And know this, that God will bring every deed into evaluation or judgment, public or secret, whether good or evil. He knows. And so you can plod away in solitude, faithfully fearing him and keeping his commandments, and remember the good. God will honor that. He'll decide what to do with that. And for all the evil we see in the world, for all the injustice, for all the wrong, know that God will judge that as well. But you have your duty. It's been summed up for you. You can talk as much as you want in protest or in excuse or with reason or explanation. And even when you are done talking, when all has been heard, the duty will remain the same. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. And when we embrace this, we find that this is the path of life. God bless you as you try to assimilate this truth into your week.